We are jumping right in today because we're looking at a massive paradigm shift about two things that literally affect every single one of us: our money and our closest relationships. You know, we usually treat these as totally separate worlds, right? Like business is business and personal is personal, or even the financial and the spiritual. But what if the ultimate blueprint for perfectly protecting both of those things was laid out over a millennium ago? Seriously, the source material we're breaking down today is going to completely change how you look at your everyday transactions. So I want you to picture a scenario with me. Have you ever lent money to a friend, or maybe a family member, someone you just genuinely deeply care about? They come to you, they're in a tight spot, and obviously you want to help. You trust them completely. So you just hand over the cash. There's no contract, no witness, no written proof. I mean, why would you even need that, right? You're practically family. You just look them in the eye, they say, "Hey, thanks, I'll pay you back soon," and you totally leave it at that.
But man, this highlights the exact trap so many of us fall into. Think about this stark contrast. We have that handshake moment, "I trust you." It feels amazing in the moment. But fast forward a few months, you kind of need that money back. So you bring it up casually, and they just look at you, completely confused, and say, "Wait, I never borrowed that much," or "I thought we agreed I'd pay it back next year." Suddenly, that amazing unspoken bond of trust, it turns into a heartbreaking argument. Suspicion creeps in. A relationship that took literally decades to build just starts tearing apart at the seams, all over fading memories.
So how do we actually prevent this? Well, the source text we're analyzing today points to a pretty shocking historical and religious fact. Honestly, if you ask people what the absolute longest verse in the Quran is about, almost everyone would guess something incredibly spiritual. They'd guess paradise? Nope. Hell? Not that either. Prayer and fasting? Still no. The longest verse in the entire text is actually about something that seems completely mundane. It's about money and financial agreements.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer directness of the command. It reads, "O you who believe, when you contract a debt for a fixed period, write it down." That is Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 282. Just think about the gravity of that for a second. The Lord of the universe, in a sacred Islamic text, dedicates the single longest verse, not to abstract theology, but to a 1,400-year-old decree telling you to get a pen and paper when you lend your buddy $20 or start a new business. I mean, why such an intense focus on financial contracts?
Well, because money unites people, but it can also brutally destroy relationships. The underlying why behind this ancient verse is profoundly practical. It recognizes the destructive power of unrecorded loans. I mean, think of all the families that literally no longer speak over inheritance disputes, or lifelong friends who turned into bitter enemies just because a business partnership didn't have clear terms written out. This verse isn't just about protecting your wallet. It's explicitly about protecting your relationships from the very human friction that money creates.
Section 1. The Science of Forgetting and Why Our Memories Fail. Let's see how this builds, because this is where ancient theology perfectly aligns with modern science. The source material shifts here to look at exactly why our memories fail us so often in these disputes, and it turns out there's a fascinating psychological validation for this ancient decree. Enter the concept of reconstructive memory. Basically, human memory does not act like a video recording that you can just press play on. Instead, your brain literally rebuilds and alters events every single time they are recalled. So your friend isn't necessarily lying to you when they say they only borrowed 50 instead of 100. They might genuinely 100% believe their own altered memory. So writing things down? It isn't about accusing your loved ones of being dishonest thieves. It's just acknowledging basic human nature and our flawed cognitive hardware.
So the absolutely crucial point here is finding the right balance. And this brings us to the profound wisdom of the source material. It rests on these two pillars: trust people, but write agreements, and love people, but protect rights. The text definitely doesn't advocate for extreme paranoia where you suspect everyone is out to ditch you, but it also doesn't advocate for naive, blind trust. It teaches wise kindness. You can have ultimate faith in your friend and still sign a contract, because that contract protects the friendship from the unavoidable flaws of human memory. Section 2. The heavy weight of debt and escalating the stakes. Now, we're going to escalate the stakes a little bit here. The Islamic teachings explored in our source view the moral responsibility of debt with incredible seriousness. It is absolutely not a casual matter to just brush off. First, though, there's a highly uplifting promise for those who act honorably. The Prophet Muhammad is quoted as saying, "Whoever intends to repay a debt, Allah will help him repay it." This hadith, which is a recorded saying or tradition of the Prophet, establishes that if you enter into a financial agreement with pure intentions and a sincere drive to fulfill your end of the bargain, you are morally and spiritually supported. It frames the repayment of debt as a noble, spiritually rewarding pursuit.
But then, we hit this incredibly stark contrast. The martyr is forgiven for everything except debt. I mean, that is a powerful gut punch. In Islamic tradition, a martyr is considered to have achieved the highest possible level of spiritual sacrifice, with all sins wiped away, except for debt. Why? Well, because a debt isn't just an issue between a person and God. It is an unalienable right belonging to another human being. You literally cannot be absolved of it without making the other person whole. That is exactly how sacred the financial rights of others are considered.
Let's zoom out for a second and look at the historical timeline of this principle. Back in the 7th century, the city of Medina was experiencing this massive trade expansion. People were buying, selling, lending, and borrowing rapidly. This decree to write it down basically laid the foundation for a society built on transparency and accountability. And you can trace that idea straight through to the 20th century and right up to today. Every modern bank agreement, every property deed, every everyday business contract follows this exact same principle. The ancient world mapped out the foundational rules of our modern financial systems centuries before they even existed.
Section 3. The ultimate balance and actionable wisdom.
So how do we synthesize all this? How does this ancient faith translate into the everyday actions you and I take when we're asked to lend a helping hand? It really comes down to understanding the monumental value of what we're actually protecting. Just think about the real-world stakes. One single, simple written agreement can save a close friendship. It can save a family relationship. It can rescue an entire business partnership. It can spare you years of painful regret. Sure, it might feel slightly awkward for like 5 minutes to ask a loved one to sign a piece of paper or send a confirmation text for a loan, but that 5 minutes of mild discomfort is an incredibly cheap insurance policy to protect relationships that are literally priceless.
So, the core takeaway from our source material today is beautifully summarized by this idea. Faith is not just about worship, it is about honesty, responsibility, and justice in dealing with others. A holistic ethical life isn't just about what you do in a place of worship, right? It's deeply tied to how you protect the rights of others out in the real world. A true believer, an ethical person, deals with people correctly, and that fundamentally means maintaining clear, transparent boundaries.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative question to think about. Why create conflict when the solution is already written? Literally, written down. If you've ever thought that trust alone is enough when money is involved, I really challenge you to apply this ancient wisdom the next time you open your wallet for a friend. Write it down, protect the relationship, and save yourselves the heartache. If you found this explainer as fascinating and practical as I did, make sure to share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thanks for hanging out and learning with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.